Okay, we left off the Mishnah Laman Aleph. Okay, Laman Aleph and Gitin. Haminiach peris lios mafresh aleim. Trumo masros. A person left fruit or produce in a location, but he's not in that location. So whenever he has tevel to tithe, he relies on that fruit or that grain, wherever it may be, that that's the grain which will become the truma of the meiser, right? Because we said marfishim achiv al achiyuv. If you have two separate piles of grain, neither have been tithed. So let's say he has in this other location a certain volume of grain. So he says, whenever I have to tithe here, I need whatever I tithe, I need all the grain which I have in front of me to be chumin. But a certain percentage is going to be truma. He says, no, the grain elsewhere should be the truma for this grain. The maser, I have to take 10%. 10% should be elsewhere. Okay? So, and you have a right to rely on presumption that since it was there last week, it's probably still there. So again, we're getting back to chazaka, because the question, even though it was there last week, maybe it's not there any longer. You have a right to presume that since it's there, it's still there. Wait. What about when you redeem Masa Sheni? Correct? Torah says that if you have Masa Sheni, the second 10%, which is the first and second, or the fourth and fifth year of the sabbatical cycle, that's Masa Sheni. So if it's too difficult to transport to Yerushalayim, Torah says, you take money, minted coins, and you transfer it onto those coins. He has money elsewhere. He says the Kedusha of the Masa Sheni here should be transferred onto that money. And you have money, a week ago the money was there. So the presumption is the money's still there. Therefore, he could transfer the Kedusha of the Masa Sheni onto that money. Again, based on Chazaka. Mostly os mafresh leim Masa Sheni. Mafresh arlein b'cheska shen kayomin. Regarding the grain, the produce, or the Masa Sheni with the money, they have a right to presume, based on Chazaka, that the fruit, the grain, and the money is still intact, is still in place, and therefore you're permitted to eat the produce without any concern, based on Chazaka. Okay? So Tosas asked, had last week, it has to be min hamukaf, that when you tithe produce, all the produce has to be not only in the same location, it has to be touching one another, right? See, the way Rashi learns, Rashi says, what do you need mukaf? Because you're not sure, it may not be there. Right? So Tosas asked, min hamukaf by trumas adoraisa. Therefore, Tosas says, even visually you see both exist, but if they're not touching, you cannot tithe one on the other. If you tithe, it's valid. It's valid, but it's not appropriate. It's a violation. You're doing it the wrong way. So if that's the case, Tosas asks, so over here, if the fruit, the produce is elsewhere, how do you tithe in one location where the produce, which is being affected, is elsewhere? That's Tosas' question. So Tosas says, we're speaking, it's Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tiv. That's an overriding factor. That since you're not going to have food for Shabbos and Yom Tiv, therefore, min hamukav is not going to in any way interfere and not allow the person to tithe. Although the produce is not in the same location as what you're affecting. So the Ramban asks, but Tosas says that Trumas Maser, take tithing the Maser, the Levi, which he gives 10% to the Kohen, that's Drabanan min hamukaf. Because the pasuk min hamukaf is only by Truma Gedola, the first time you take Truma. Trumas Maser is rabbinical, it's exera, because if we wouldn't be adamant about mukaf by Trumas Maser, a person is not going to do it properly by Truma Gedola, by the first time you take Truma. Right? So therefore it's rabbinical. So if the Mishnah was speaking when it says Maseros, when it says Maser, it means Maser, the Maser, Trumas Maser, it's not a problem. So since it's Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tiv, it's only rabbinical, so that becomes an overriding factor. Because this question is not going to have food for Shabbos and Yom Tiv, but if we're speaking about Truma Gedola, we're speaking about the first tithe you're taking, from the larger amount, it's Nisa Doraisa. I mean, because you're not going to have food for Shabbos and Yom, how do you violate Nisa Doraisa? Mina Mukaf, it has to all be touching in the same location. That's a Torah law. So the Ramban learns when the Mishnah says, Mafsherev Trum U Masros, Masros means Trumas Maisa. It doesn't mean Truma Gedola. Truma does not mean Truma Gedola, it means Trumas Maser.
But it's Truma and Meiser.
No, Meiser is never a problem. Also rabbinical. That's rabbinical. Truma in the Mishnah, Truma U Maser, two separate things. Truma.
Right.
Truma means the Trumas Maser, and Maser means just the Maser.
Why would you say Trumas Meiser?
Of course, it's we has to mention magic. It's a dochik. I'm not saying it's not a dochik. It's a dochik, but that's what he learns because he has the question. Otherwise, it's a problem. I mean, you could say even a bigger dochik. See, if it would be a shev al taser, right? The Chachomim, they're able to override a Torah law if you violated passes. You don't blow the shofar Rosh Hashanah. You don't take Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. One doesn't take the lulav if the first day of Rosh Hashanah is Shabbos. So there, they tie your hands. You're not proactively violating the law. But over here, the Torah says you're not permitted to tithe unless all the grain is touching. It's not even enough to be in your presence. So if that's the case, by tithing, you're actively violating what the Torah says you shouldn't do. That's what Kuva say. So you say, the times Chazal, they are empowered to do it. They are, they just don't. So you'd say, for the sake of having food for Shabbos and Yom Tov, they do it. Right? That's what you have to say. But the Ramban says no. The Ramban prefers to say when the Mishnah says Truma doesn't mean Truma Gedola, the first time you tithe, but rather it's the Truma of the Maser, which is only rabbinical. So if it's a question the person may not have food for Shabbos and Yom Tov, that becomes the overriding factor. Okay? Now, what about Ovdu? He tithes it, assuming that the produce is there, then a day later he goes to check. 2 days later he goes to check. The produce is not there. So now the question is, meantime he has grain, does he have to retithe it? Because now you have a question. I mean, what happened to, was it there at the time he did the tithing? Maybe as it's not there today, it wasn't there a week ago already. So how far back do I have to suspect? And he's been tithing on this for the past month. He had enough grain there that he's able to tithe for the past month he's been tithing. And he has, if he ate the grain, there's nothing to talk about. If he ate. So he ate tevel. What could you do? But let's say he still has grain and produce, which he tithed, which he relied on that. Now he finds out it's not there. Now how long hasn't it been there? So if he tithed, let's say yesterday, maybe it wasn't there yesterday. What about a month ago? Do we say a month ago? If you go back as far as a month, that means whatever he tithed for the past month has to be retithed.
He checked a month.
A month ago he checked. He knows it was there. He checked a month ago it was there.
30 days later he tithed.
30 days later, no, for the past 30 days he's been tithing. And now he has all the produce, a majority. And now he checks, he finds it's not there. So the time that he checked, there's no question. Right? The time he checked, let's say 5 minutes later he tithed. The presumption it was there. What about 2 days later he tithed? Or a day later he tithed? So how far back do I assume that it was there, that he had a right to rely at that, even though it's not there today, the presumption was it was there then, despite the fact it's not there, and I'm not sure how far back I go.
You had a certain date and you have a chazaka that it was there because he saw it. And nothing else. It stays with that chazaka until you find that other one. Like the mikveh.
Like the mikveh is just the opposite. Like the mikveh, it's a problem.
It's the same concept. It's whether you know less than 40 sa'ar.
To what's the halacha? After you go to the mikveh again, right? It's the halacha.
That's the halacha.
So you also have two chazakas. You have tevel and you have a reisa, right? We can discuss it, right? I mean, what's the case of mikveh? Person measures a mikveh, definitely at 40 so. He immersed the kalim in the mikveh. He went to the mikveh. A week later, he measures it. It's less than 40 so. He's not sure exactly when did it become deficient. So you'd say, well, you have a chazaka meikora. Initially, there was an original presumed status. Now I find it's deficient. If you pit a chazaka dahashta, the present chazaka, which is deficient, versus the original chazaka, the Chazaka Meikara overrides the Chazaka Dehashta. But you have but we also have another Chazaka Meikara. He himself was contaminated, or the vessels were contaminated. So we say it's 2-to-1. Everything's contaminated. He has to go to the mikveh again. So here you have the same thing. You have, it was untithed grain, untithed produce. Initially, the produce was there. Now I find the produce is not there. So if you go best according to the presence, that's a chazaka, as it wasn't here today, it wasn't here yesterday. So if I pitch just one against the other, the original status, presumed status, overrides the present. But here I'm also dealing with cheskes tevel, right? Initially, what was the original status of the grain? So now my question is, did its status ever change based on the original tithing? So since you take it all into consideration simultaneously, you have a 2-to-1, and therefore it has to be retithed.
It's the same.
Same. The Gemara will say same as mikvah. Okay? So we'll see. Im avdu. Now he realizes the produce went lost. Hariza choshesh. Me'es leis divrei Reb Lozer. Now, there's a main argument. Does it mean you only go back 24 hours? Me'es leis means a 24-hour period. You only have to suspect within the last 24 hours, maybe it went lost. But up to the past 24 hours, the presumption is it was there. We'll see. Or maybe no. You only, from the last time it was checked, it's 24 hours afterwards. We say it was there. If anything happened, it happened after 24 hours from the original checking. So the question, do I go back only 24 hours? I have to be concerned. But any time before the 24 hours, we say it was there. Or do we say no? That after it was checked, you give 24 hours, and the questionable time is after the original 24 hours from the original checking. So me and Machlokes had to learn how to understand. The Gemara is going to show from the Brisa that it's only within the past 24 hours. But any time before that 24 hours, the halacha is we have a right to rely on the chazaka that the produce was there. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Now, the halacha is when you tithe one on the other, let's say you have wine which turned to wine vinegar. And you tithe wine vinegar on wine. Is it a valid tithing? It's a valid tithing. But the evidence is valid. But you're not supposed to. It's called minara latov. From the deficient, inferior on the good quality, it's not appropriate. It's even a question of Issa d'Oraisa. If you do it, it's valid. So now the question is, a person had the same thing. He had a wine cellar, and he had elsewhere, and he had wine that he would use on his table. He had a wine reserve in his house. And whenever he would want wine, he would say, the wine in my wine cellar, there's a certain barrel there. The wine in that barrel should be the truma or the meiser for what? For the wine that I drink. He goes and ritually checked. The wine wasn't sour. Didn't turn to vinegar. A week later, he goes and he finds the wine is vinegar. The question: when did it turn? If it turned, so that's the question over here. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. No, the question is here: if the evidence is valid, so what, it's irrelevant when it turned. Post facto, he didn't think. See, if it's valid, you can't tithe it again. The answer is, let's say time passed, he didn't tithe it yet. Do we have to be concerned? It may have soured. Do it l'chatchila. Because there's certain seasons, certain times, because of climate change, it's not unusual for it to sour. So therefore you have to be concerned, maybe it's soured. Normally you don't have to be concerned it's soured. We'll see. Review the Omer b'shlosha prokim botkin esayayin. The 3 periods, times during the year, you have to check the wine to see if it's soured. Because there's certain exterior issues which could impact on the wine to make it sour. What are they? The kidum shel motzei chag. After Sukkot passes, there's an easterly wind which blows based on the climate, and that easterly wind could cause the wine to sour. Okay? So therefore, don't rely on the original checking, because there's been a change that's taken place which could affect the quality of the wine to cause it to change, to turn sour, to turn to vinegar. There's no nemonos. So you smell it. How do you, what? You smell it. Does it smell like vinegar? Does it smell like wine? It's tevel. I mean, you're not permitted. It's untimed. But so smadder, when the grape goes from a bud to a very unripened grape, also that period of time, during that season, when it goes from the bud to the grape on the most unripened level, that's a time where wine sours. When the moisture absorbs into the grape, that the grape becomes a full grape. Goes from boser is like sour grapes to a grape which has sufficient moisture, liquid in it, that it tastes like a grape. During these transitional periods, wine, it's not unusual that wine sours. So therefore the wine has to be checked. There's an argument in Nida. The Mishnah says in Nida, a woman checks herself, and she has it's been determined she's not a Nida. And then she finds blood 3 days later, and she didn't check herself in the past 3 days. So there's no question. Any tyros, any truma, something which you have to maintain its status of kedusha, of purity, that she engaged with from the time she checked, right? There's not a question. Right after she checked, if she touched it. But in the interim, the question is, when did she menstruate? Do we say she menstruated at this moment, or do we say the moment the woman contracts, her uterus contracts, the blood leaves the uterus, she becomes a need immediately. The blood physically doesn't have to leave the body. So maybe the blood was held up within her body, and it just was expelled from body today, but it could have been there for the past 24 hours. So anything she touched within 24 hours would actually, she would be tummy, correct? She would have contaminated, because she's already in nida. The moment the blood leaves the uterus, she's in nida. That's the question. Is it from the time that's found?
Right.
Or do we say it's within the last 24 hours, because it's not unusual that even after the uterus contracts and blood is expelled from the uterus, the body sometimes retains it before it reveals itself, and it's exposed. We're talking about a minuscule amount of blood, not when a woman's actually bleeding, she's menstruating, okay? So over there's an argument. Do we say dayir shaita? Do we say it's at the moment that you find blood, then she's a nida? Or do we say meisleis, you go back 24 hours? There's an argument, do you go back 24 hours? Or do you go all the way back to the last bedika? The last time she checked herself, okay? So we'll discuss it in a minute. My meisleis, when it says in the Mishnah that when you find out later that the produce that you relied on is no longer there, from what time do I have to suspect that they may have not been there? So the Mishnah says, Rabbi Lozis is meisleis. What does meisleis mean? 24-hour period. Rabbi Yochanan meisleis shel bedika. Yeah. It's from the time it was checked. 24 hours from the time it was checked. You give that period of time that the presumption was there. After that period of time, it wasn't there. No, which means he finds out now it wasn't there. The bedika is he finds out it wasn't there.
So from that point you go back 24.
From that point you go back. Shebotka motzan avudin. Right? He checked and he found the produce was not there. Choshem emi'esov be'es hazos ovdu. You're going back 24 hours to be concerned. It may have not been there. So Rabbi Yochanan's mekel. I know it was there a month ago. I only have to be concerned within the past 24 hours maybe something happened. So Rabbi Yochanan is lenient. So anything, if you tithe within the past 24 hours, from that moment that you realize it wasn't there, it has to be retithed. But anything before that moment, you don't have to be concerned. The Chazakah tells us, as it was there earlier, it was there until that point. So the only time you have to redo it is only if the tithing took place within the past 24 hours. The Chachama were not machmir to be concerned. So the whole thing is rabbinical. In truth, on the Torah level, you have a right to say that the produce was there until you realized it wasn't there. Except the Chachamim, it's a Chumrah, we give it 24 hours.
How does it square away with what we said, the 2 to 1?
Well, tomorrow we'll talk about it, 2 to 1.
Because
Right, say it should be similar. It should be similar to mikvah.
seems, because you're changing the status as well.
Yeah. See, it's interesting. The Gemara in Nida, even the case of mikvah, is not so simple. The Gemara has 2 interpretations of the Mishnah in mikvos. If it's a 2 to 1, it's similar. We should have 2 to 1 here, right? We find the fruit is not there, produce is not there. Plus, the grain that I want to cover is tevel. So I have 2 chazokas versus the first chazokah. Correct? That's number 1. The other answer, Mar says, chozi vasoy. Meaning, when a mikvah loses water, it doesn't happen in a moment. It's a gradual loss. Chazokah means, let's say a woman is a virgin. She lost her virginity. So she's no longer, it's one act. So that, okay? So there you could say, well, I pit a chazokah meikora versus a chazokah hashta. Right? That's intact until it changes. Here, the chazokah meikora, the original chazokah is not such a simple chazokah because it didn't happen in a moment. So I have to trace it all the way back to, if it would happen in a moment, it happened the last moment. Did this happen the last moment? The mikvah. The mikvah is missing a quart of water, let's say. It doesn't lose a quart in a moment. So that means I have to go back. Understand? The whole concept is, chazokah dashta means, when did she lose her virginity? It happened a moment ago. When did it become contaminated? A moment ago. When did it lose? When did it become deficient? It was not a moment ago. So if it's no longer a moment ago, how far back do I go? I don't know how far back to go. Because it's a process, okay? So if that's the case, you can differentiate between the mikveh. By the mikveh, it's not because it's tater v'reo, so it's 2 to 1. If it's 2 to 1, here it's also 2 to 1. Same thing. But if it's because of the gradual loss, then it has no application over here. Right? It's not a gradual issue because here it happens. For some reason, somebody took it. Somebody stole the produce. An animal took the produce. It's no longer there. So therefore, here you could rely on chazakah meikora. So now it's purely rabbinical. So how far back do I go? Do I go back, say, only the past 24 hours I have to be concerned? Or I go back, as we'll see in a moment, 24 hours after it was checked, that's the only time we say it definitely was intact. After 24 hours, that's when the question arises. Again, this is all rabbinical. To what degree were they machmir rabbinically? On a Torah level, you rely on chazakah until the last moment. It disappeared, the last moment possible to disappear.
I recall us having discussed before, but my memories are good on this, that if there's a problem, we assume that the problem occurred at the very last possible moment. We
Correct.
don't go back and assume
Well,
the problem.
you cannot say by mikvah. That's how it differentiates. Contaminated, it's one moment it becomes contaminated. When did it become contaminated? The last moment. When did she lose her virginity? The last moment. Right? There's a question. A man marries a woman, she's a virgin. And then there's a question, he consummates the marriage, 12 months later he finds she's not a virgin. When did she lose her virginity? Before they were married or after they were married? During the betrothal period. So based on chazakah, we say it happened during the betrothal period. Correct? Because chazakah means until the last moment, the presumption is she was a virgin. So, and now there's a question, how did she lose her virginity? Was she raped? Was it an accident? Or she committed adultery? So that's no question about the ksuba. The ksuba, if she committed adultery, the ksuba, she receives no ksuba. And if she wasn't a virgin when she was married, the marriage was under false pretenses, again, she doesn't receive the ksuba of a basula. At best, she'll receive a ksuba of a woman who's not a virgin. That's where it's discussed. But over there, it's a moment. Whenever she lost her virginity, it happened the last moment possible. And so the presumption is when he married her, she was a virgin. Therefore, she has a right to claim the full ksuba. Okay.
But the animal taking it would be like the next. The animal doesn't take it all in one shot. It takes a little by little.
What?
The food.
What are you talking about? How do you know? Firstly, you're not sure which.
You don't know what happened.
You don't know. Firstly, you don't know which it took either. First of all, an animal could take everything at one time. Why an animal can't take? Of course, an animal can take it. A person could have taken it. There are multiple reasons to be why it's not there. It doesn't make a difference. Okay.
So, Rabbi, with the mikvah, we don't say it's the last possible.
That's one interpretation why mikveh is different than, let's say, the nida. When I ask by nida, it's also why it's different than mikveh. By the nida, according to Beis Shammai, we say she just menstruated now. Because you have a chazokah. She has a chazokah that she wasn't a menstruant. And now you find the blood. But simultaneously, so over there, it's very good because there she has a cheskes tara. There she has a cheskes tara. That's how the Gemara differentiates. Therefore, you don't change it. It's only you're pitting the present versus the original. Before she found the blood, she was permitted.
That's the last possible moment.
That's the last possible moment.
The mikvah? Because, I mean, the crossover.
The mikveh, I told you, the two possibilities. Either it's 2 to 1, that's why,
Right.
or you can't say it happened the last possible moment. Because now I don't feel it's missing 1 ounce of water. It loses an ounce. It's a process. So the question is, how far do I go back? When there's a question, how far do you go back, then you can't say, you can't rely on chazok meikar, because going back all the way, I don't say, I go back to the moment where this amount of water could have been lost. I don't say that. It's only, I say, I go back to the last moment, where it happened in the moment. Okay? That's how it differentiates. That's something else. Well, that's they argue there. Reb Meir says Choshishin. I mean, Reb Yehuda, Reb Shimon, and Reb Yossi say Shemi Boka Nod. So Reb Meir answers, but it hasn't burst yet. That's what he answers. You're worried about. So he says, he factually says, I'm not worried. He says it's not a concern.
They would treat it like we're treating it here, but the others would say.
Since it's not unlikely, it doesn't. We can't take a chance. But over there it has to do with Breira, because. So it's been indicated that it was never meant to be tithed. So if it was never meant to be tithed, what do? You drink tevel. That shows so tevel l'mafreya. Retroactively, it was never meant to be tithed, so you drank untithed wine. Yeah, but again, it has nothing to do with chazaka. If I know it's going to burst before I tithe it, can we talk about chazaka? It has nothing to do with chazaka. They are concerned. Shemi Bokanot. They are. It's not unlikely it's not going to burst. So therefore I can't take a chance. Correct. Okay.
So when you talk about a continuous process like a mikvah, say evaporation, it happens a little bit.
Same thing.
So you couldn't do a calculation. So I know a month ago it had 42 7, and now it's got 39 when I measure. I can do a calculation. Missing 30 days. You know, I can't do something like that.
Right. Correct.
And say it crossed over here.
Correct.
I would have to go back to the last check.
Right. Let's check. Exactly.
Okay, but with Tevel, it doesn't have that characteristic.
No. Tevel, it's a
Yes
mo.
or no?
No. There's a question. It was taken.
It was taken, I understand.
So it was taken. My question: what was it taken?
When was it taken?
When I tithed, was it still there? Wasn't it there? Was it taken already? Therefore, it's not a valid tithing, or was there? Therefore, it is a valid tithing.
there we don't go back to the very beginning. What do we do?
No, therefore you have a right to rely on chazaka there. There you would have a right to rely on chazaka.
Until
Right.
the very last minute?
Till the very last minute. So why do we give it 24 hours? It's a chumrah rabbanon, achmer rabbanon. Rabbis were stringent. It's not on the Torah level. It's purely rabbinical. It's like, very well, people. What are people going to say? People will say he tithed something that wasn't there at the time of the tithing.
So the differentiation now again between mikvah and tevel is what? Why do we go back to the...
I'm saying the only way we're able to differentiate, 24 hours is clearly rabbinical. It's a rabbinical stringent. Being on Torah level, really, you wouldn't have to retithe. You wouldn't have to retithe. What about mikvah? It's the same 2 to 1. So you have to say, we have to differentiate. That the reason why mikvah is not effective is because it's not because it's a 2 to 1 issue, but rather because it's a gradual evaporation or absorption. Gemara says it absorbs into the ground. Or people go to the mikvah, gradually they take the water out with their bodies. So it's not something that happens in the moment. So which is not the case by tevel. It happened in a moment. Whoever took it, he could have taken it all at one time. Maybe yes, maybe no, but it could happen in one moment. Therefore, I have a right to rely on chazaka that it happened the last moment.
There's like a weakness in the chazaka.
In the original chazaka. Mikveh, there's a weakness in the original chazaka.
Because we know that there's evaporation happening.
Right, so it's never really secure, that chazaka.
Unsteady.
Correct. Even though there's a concept of chazaka asu l'shtanos. Things are meant to change. Right? Right. She's meant to transition from minor or from puberty to fully mature. Nara to Bulgaris. Okay, we have just a moment. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, you only machmir the last 24 hours, but prior to 24 hours, and anything that was tithed, the presumption is that the grain, the produce was there. Rabbi Loza ben Antignus omer mishum Rabbi Loza ben Rabbi Yanai me'es le'es shel hanocho. Meaning, it's only the first 24-hour period after you know the fruit was there. Any tithing that took place during that 24 hours, you have a right to presume it was there. Any time after that 24-hour period, it comes into question. It may have not been there. If more than 24 hours passed, you have no right to rely on chazaka. Let's say you did it and afterwards you checked. L'chatchila, you're taking a chance that you may be eating tevel. Rabbinically. Tanan, im ovdu areza choshish meis leis. It says, you find that fruits were lost, you have to be choshish, you have to be concerned meis leis. Bishul man meis leis shel bedika shapir. If it was 24 hours from the time that I checked, Rabbi Yochanan, the reads well, but if you're going back from the original time when you set it in place, it's 24 hours only after that original placing it there. It shouldn't say meis leis, it should say ad meis leis, mi boile kasha. So the language should read differently, to be continued.